Hi guys. My name's Jennifer Host, but my friends call me Jenny. I probably should have gone before Bruna because now I'm in my feelings about what I'm going to name my inner gremlin, but it works out. Yeah, thanks to Yelda. I'm happy that she asked me to speak here today. I feel like, in today's climate, there's a lot of things that, are making us feel unsafe as women, especially surrounding police. And there's like a lot that we can say in this discussion when it comes to police and safety. I think we could go, there are a lot of, we can have many conversations within this conversation, but I want to share with you guys a little bit about your rights and kind of knowing your rights so that it makes you feel more as secure as you can, I guess, during police encounters if you do have the unfortunate time of running into a police officer nowadays. Like Yelda said, I can't share legal advice with you, and I'm here in my personal capacity, not as a legal aid rep, but everything that I'm going to share with you is on the New York Civil Liberties Union's website. And if you don't live in New York, there is like an equivalent for every state. So there's one in California, and you can always check out the ACLU. They have a lot of Know Your Rights campaigns, especially surrounding like civil issues and different things that you're entitled to that you can always check out. But, I also want to kind of preface this as in like, we've seen, we're watching the videos right now in New York City. We saw the video that popped up on Twitter today that shows the young activists getting basically jumped on by NYPD officers and thrown into a van. We've seen other videos that are showing the police brutality that we're all suffering. I just want to start this by saying that you can do every single thing right in a police encounter. You can be as respectful as possible. You can, carry yourself out with as much respect to that police officer as you possibly can, and things can still go left. So if you're finding yourself in a situation where you're being falsely arrested or you're unfortunately the victim of police brutality, I just want you guys to know that that's not a reflection on who you are. That's wholeheartedly a reflection on the police officer that you've encountered and the toxic police department and the culture that's really going to be reinforced. And I'm going to give you guys some tips, but I want you guys to know that even if you are falsely arrested or you are the victim of police brutality, that's wholeheartedly not your fault. You should consult a lawyer. I have so many clients that look across from me when I'm meeting them in arraignments, and they tell me like, I'm a good person, I didn't think this would ever happen to me, or, like my mom raised me right. Like, I'm not this type of person. This really is not a reflection on who you are. And they really do not have the right to do this to you. You do have civil rights. You absolutely can pursue civil claims and civil remedies. You should talk to a lawyer. If you're in New York, the Legal Aid Society will help you. There are different organizations that, if you need help, you can always tap in to Yelda, the Camel Assembly, and I'm happy to help you guys navigate that. But I just want you guys to know that just because I'm giving you tips on different ways that you can kind of try to make yourself feel safer, that you can do everything right and it can still go wrong. But, saying that, I'm going to talk about, what can you do to protect yourself first? Let's talk about, the beginning of the police encounter right on the street. So the first thing you really need to know is that everything you say to the police is important. Everything that you say to a police officer from the moment a police officer approaches you can be used against you. And the moment that a police officer sees you as a suspect, everything they say to you is to confirm that you are in fact a suspect and that you are in fact have committed a crime, to justify their fact that they are actually coming to you and they're invading your liberty and they're stopping you on the street, right? Everything they do is with the aim in mind of trying to create evidence against you, right? So you have the right not to speak. You absolutely have the right to remain silent. You can tell the police officer, I would like to remain silent. They cannot force you to say anything to them. They cannot force you to speak with them. And you also have the right to a search. You have to consent to a search. And even if they decide to search you and you haven't consented, you can protect yourself by very affirmatively saying, I am not consenting to this search. In New York, the police officers are required by law to ask you whether you consent to the search before they actually do search you. Obviously, that's best practices, doesn't happen all the time, but if we have body cameras now in New York, body cameras are making a huge difference as far as us being able to assert different people's rights. If your officer has a body camera and you say to the officer, I do not consent to the search, that can help protect you in a suppression hearing down the road if they find evidence against you that should be suppressed because it was found in an illegal search, okay? What you're seeing when people are getting arrested for like videotaping police encounters, and what you're seeing some people are getting arrested at the protests is there is a crime called obstructing governmental administration, and there's like an equivalent in every jurisdiction, and that's if you interfere with an arrest, right? So when you get arrested for filming somebody, that's because they're saying that you're interfering with that arrest, right? Like you're coming too close to the arrest, you know. So what I would always say is that if you have a friend who you're witnessing on the street get arrested, it's best practices to cross the street, right? And film it from across the street. But I think that, you know, this is an area where we can talk about what Mame was saying, which is where your physical presence can actually very much make a difference in this moment, right? If you're standing across the street watching the police officer, that can very much affect how they're going to be acting and how they're going to encounter with you. So, you know, when I see somebody getting arrested on the street, I very much wait 5 minutes to make sure that, like, you know, see if they need my help. You know, even if I'm not in New York, you know, your physical body being there can actually make a difference as far as whether this police officer is going to use police brutality. So not getting in the way of the arrest is a very careful balance, because you don't want to get arrested for interfering, but also it is a way in which you can be an ally in a way that you can help, you know, especially people of color. When you see people of color getting arrested, you know, this is a way that we, you know, people who are trying to find a way to be an ally, they can certainly be an ally in this way. The next area is kind of like if you're stopped and questioned and frisked by police. So we're still in police encounters, right? In New York, to detain you, which means to hold you, they have to have reasonable suspicion that you have committed some sort of crime or about to commit a crime, okay? So the language that you need to know is, am I free to leave? Am I under arrest, right? Because the moment the police officer says no, if he does not have probable cause, that becomes an illegal seizure, right? So if you have not been, they are like, okay, I think that maybe something weird is happening here, but I don't totally know what it is. You don't have to keep engaging in the conversation beyond, you know, you can hand them your ID, tell them your name, ask them if you're free to leave. And if they don't have a reason to arrest you, you are going to be illegally seized at that moment if the police officer says no. In New York, you're not required to carry an ID, but it does help with police situations to have an ID, because sometimes if you refuse to produce an ID, they will take you to the police station, try to like confirm your identity in another way, can lead to other issues for you, but there's not any legal requirement that you carry an ID. In New York, again, officers who are investigating a crime, they do have to identify themselves to let you know of the interaction. They should give you a business card upon request. Obviously, that doesn't happen in a lot of these types of encounters, right? Like, this is just what they're supposed to do, not necessarily what they do all the time. You know, I tell my clients, right, like how you speak to them matters. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you should pander to a police officer who is like very wholly being disrespectful to you or is committing, you know, an illegal arrest or something like that. But, you know, the best advice and the advice that we're told to give is to try to be as respectful as possible, because they will make a decision to arrest, you know, if they feel like you're getting in an argument with them, they will just make a decision to arrest you, and that just kind of is what it is. The next area is kind of where you really have different kind of opportunities to get stopped by police is when you're in your car. I think that like driving a car in the United States is pretty much, you know, your number one chance of really having a police encounter if you're not living in a city where you really have police on the streets, like New York, Chicago, different places like that. When it comes to car searches, they have to have a reason to pull you over. The best practice is when they pull you over to give them your driver's license, your registration, and proof of insurance. The thing about cars is they absolutely cannot search your car unless they have reasonable suspicion that there is either contraband or some sort of weapon in your car. So again, you have to consent to a search, and for them to be able to search your car. They can't just, sometimes, you know, there's a question now, and it's unsettled whether weed smoke lets them search your car anymore in New York because it is, you know, decriminalized and things like that. But that's the number one reason why they're gonna use to try to get into your car, right? They're gonna be like, oh, I smell weed smoke, I'm gonna search your car. And that's a big way that the police officers get into your car to do an illegal search, even if they smell nothing. DWIs are kind of I could do a whole topic on DWIs because DWIs are very like formulaic, you know, there's different, you know, this is one of the areas where you're really going to get, you know, you have a right against self-incrimination under the Constitution. And DWIs are an area where you will get evidence that will be compelled, that you'll have to give that is going to be used against you because they will ask you to take a breath test, right? And a coordination test. You should be aware that if you refuse this test, your license will probably get suspended. But it's up to you whether you make the decision to refuse the test or not. If you get arrested, your car will be searched, right? It's going to be searched incident to arrest. It could be impounded. They could call a family member to get your car, things like that. So I want to talk about what happens if a police officer comes to your home. A police officer cannot enter your home without a warrant, okay? Unless they have reason to believe that there is an emergency happening in your home, where it's going to be directly threatening someone's safety. You can ask, if they knock on your door and they say, we have a warrant, you can ask them to slide the warrant under your door, right? But if they don't have a warrant and they're banging on your door and they have no reason to believe that you're home, there's no reason a police officer can bust down your door. They have to have a warrant to get into your home. If you're arrested in your home, and the police officer have something that they can see that's in plain view, that, you know, that's fair game for them. There's the plain view doctrine that they can observe things that are in your immediate surrounding area. So if you get arrested and then you are taken to the precinct, you do also have the right to remain silent. You can assert that right. You know, only thing you should really be telling them is your name and your address. You know, it's natural to want to explain to police what happened. You know, that's human nature. When something happens, you know, you want to explain to what happened. You want to tell your side of the story. Like that's completely natural to want to do that. And the way that the police officers will treat you, because everything that they do from the moment that they see you is designed to make you feel less safe. Everything that they're doing from the moment that they are talking to you is to try to make you give them this evidence that they can use against you. So it's natural to want to give explanations. It's natural to want to tell them the story of what happened. You absolutely should not do that. You know, you can always come up with discuss your defense with your lawyer later. It's very rare that you're going to find something that you're going to be able to say that's going to change your outcome, right? That's going to change the situation. But you sure as hell can give evidence against yourself by by trusting that these police officers actually want to hear what you have to say, right? You should ask for a lawyer. You can ask for a lawyer immediately. You know, if you can't afford a lawyer, you can ask for a public defender. You can ask the police to contact a lawyer. You have a right to speak with a lawyer before signing any statements, before talking to police. You should speak with a lawyer before you sign any statements. You know, you can ask to contact a family member after a reasonable amount of time. They will allow you to contact some sort of family member. I'll tell you, if you are arrested in New York, they'll get a point in time when you're going to get taken to bookings where you'll be able to make phone calls. And so it's, you know, if you're out protesting or something like that, that would have made it so, you know, you feel as though there's a risk of being arrested. You absolutely, you know, there's phone numbers I can give you for New York. There's other organizations that I can direct you to in other states. You should go out with those phone numbers. You should, anybody who would pay bail for you, like, you know, I know that phone number, right? Like you should have that phone number memorized because you're not going to get the opportunity to really look at your cell phone. You know, like there is very rare that you're going to get the opportunity to get these phone numbers from your cell phone. I often have clients who I'll be like, what's your phone number? And they're like, I don't know my phone number, you know, because it's like we live in a day where we all have cell phones, right? You know, you know, there's some on the NYCLU website, they have, you know, a bunch of tips on behavior and like things like that you can try to do. You know, they say you should keep your hands where you can see them. You know, you shouldn't ever touch the police officer. Even if you believe you're innocent, if you're being arrested, you shouldn't resist because that's going to make the situation much more physical for you. It's going to introduce a lot of physicality to your arrest that wasn't there before. but I say these things knowing that like, I can't even imagine how angry I would be if I was being falsely arrested for something. You know what I mean? So, but these are just kind of like the tips that they say to do. If you are injured, you should absolutely take photos. As soon as you get home, you should document all of your injuries. You should be, if the police hurt you, you should definitely document all of your injuries. And if you are falsely arrested, you really should contact a lawyer right away so that you can assert your rights. Because a lot of people believe that you should wait till your case is dismissed, and you will actually have foregone a lot of different things if you wait a certain amount of time in New York. So, that's something that you absolutely should try to do soon. Something that's not on the website that I just directed you to, but something I did want to talk about is like, what happens when I call 911, right? I'm in a situation where I feel unsafe and I feel like I need to call 911. So, this can happen in a domestic violence situation, right? Sadly with a boyfriend, this can happen, this can happen in other situations. You should know that if you call 911, the power is not going to be in your hands about what happens next, right? You are introducing police into the situation, right? If it is a domestic violence case, you will have an order of protection after that that's going to say the person can have no contact with you. That's not going to be your order. That's the court's order. And there's going to be nothing you can do about it. This system is so patriarchal and it is so designed against Black and brown people that they give you no autonomy in those decisions, right? Like there's this idea that you can press charges against people. The state is the people pressing charges against you, and they can certainly go forward with cases even after you don't want to. So a lot of my clients will tell me I was actually the one who called 911. Like I thought they were gonna, I thought if I called 911 that they were gonna be social workers. I thought if they were gonna help diffuse the situation, I thought they were gonna talk to him. If you call 911, they are going to make an arrest, right? Like that is what they're designed to do, and that's why they're going there. So you should keep that in mind as far as like, how much autonomy do I want to give away in this situation, right? But there's times you feel unsafe, right? Like I'm just telling you this to tell you about things that you can consider that they're not going to tell you when you first talk to the police, or even when you first talk to a prosecutor. Oftentimes I'll have a domestic violence case where I'm the first person who is calling the complaining witness, right? No one's had reached out to them about what they want. So just some things to keep in mind. I know that there are some questions, so we can go ahead and start answering them. If anybody,
yeah, let's get into it. You want to scroll right up until, do you want me to feed them to you, or are you looking at them?
I can kind of see them. But
yeah, so I guess it sort of starts at 6:45 p.m. from Michelle.
Let's say I were to say, I am not consenting to the search of the car. What's next? Does the officer then get backup? I'm curious of the outcome here. Well, that's going to be the officer's decision, right? You are putting on record that I am not consenting to this search. So for the search to go forward, he has to have probable cause for the search. He has to have reasonable suspicion that there is criminality afoot, right? So if he doesn't have that, maybe that officer isn't going to go forward with the search, right? He's going to make a different decision. Maybe he is going to call backup. If it's a drug case, maybe they call the dog and the dog walks around the car, something like that. Or they go forward with the search, right? And you've just put it on record for your lawyer to use later. So it really depends on kind of the facts surrounding it and whether the officer is going to feel like he can go forward with the search at that point or not. But you've at least put on record that you're not consenting to the search and preserved your rights under the Fourth Amendment. So what motivated you to be a lawyer, and how's your journey been as a woman? Well, I'm actually somebody who, like cliche, always wanted to be a lawyer. I thought I was going to be a lawyer who made a ton of money though. Like I thought I was going to be a divorce attorney when I first went to law school. I was like, we're going to jam the men up. Like that's what we're going to do. But then I started working at a public defender's office, and as somebody who's been super privileged and has lived in like a very affluent community, it was shocking to me in a way that I just really couldn't let go. And I worked with people and they really changed me and who I was as like a person. So when I say like now I want to be a lawyer because I want to be a public defender, like that's who I want to be. These are the people I want to represent. And like, that's the way I want to use my privilege. I think being a woman has made it, they say that the legal profession now is 51% women. But, it's still very much like a boys' club. The judges, it's a boys' club. Prosecutors, it's a boys' club. I got called sweetheart on the phone from like an old attorney earlier when I was like, you should get your client out of jail. Like, so I do feel like, it's still the same stereotypes that you always feel like you have to listen to, but it's really nothing like, being a woman of color and a lawyer, especially in my profession, it's really nothing compared to that. Like when we talk about intersectionality, what they go through, like, and what I watch them go through in the court, it makes me feel like my job it's so much easier for me because I'm not facing, well, I have some critics, I'm facing way less critics than they do. Deanna says, does saying I wish to remain silent and I do not consent to a search then provoke the police because they see you as being uncooperative, even though those are your civil rights, as well as asking if you're free to leave? They might see you as uncooperative, but there's nothing there. It just makes their job harder. That's the only reason why they're making it uncooperative, because you're asserting your rights. You know what I mean? It's certainly, if you are respectful about it and you're saying, you know what I mean, and you show that you know your rights and that you know what's going on, it's the same way as in every single place you are, right? Like when you show somebody that you actually understand the situation, they're going to give you more respect, right? And so I feel that when you show the police that you actually understand your rights and you know what they're allowed to do to you, I actually think it adds a little bit of respect to the situation. But again, like, they're, bad apples and all, I think the way it is with the police department, you really sometimes can't predict, but you have at least preserved your rights in that way. Is there a time frame in which one can fight a case where someone was wrongfully arrested for probable cause? I can answer that question to you offline. It has to do a lot with what state you're in. In New York, you only have 90 days, but for that type of stuff, but happy to talk to you more about that to get more info. So should we not carry ID or credit cards, IDing info to protest, or would they create more problems because they can't identify us if we're arrested? I would take an ID personally, just because I think that if they want to give you a summons, and you have an ID, they can do that, right? Which is a ticket that they write you on the street. If you don't have an ID, it could mean that they have to bring you to the police precinct, and that could lead to, it just, I don't believe any prolonged encounter. I feel like it's just as much as you can limit your time with the police as possible is, that's always how I feel, as a person. What if he doesn't even have probable cause and still conduct the search, i.e., making up the weed smell when there isn't? That's really when your lawyer is really going to come into play, right? Like your lawyer has a duty to investigate, investigate every single case, right? And like your lawyer, that's a lot of the way that these issues with police officers come to light is through cross-examination, and that's really going to be your decision about whether you decide to fight the case, whether you decide to go through with the suppression hearing. There's a lot of pressure to plead guilty, even if you feel like what happened in your case wasn't right. A lot of that's going to come out in the case, it's going to come out in that type of way. And you're really going to, hope that you got a good lawyer like me who's going to look into it. It sounded to me that marijuana, that they can say anything about a smell, whether present or not, to gain access. Honestly, like I've never had a DWI case where they haven't said the guy has bloodshot eyes and smell strong odor of alcohol. Like, marijuana is something that if they see a little marijuana, they'll be like, oh, he's got a, it smells like marijuana. Like I can get into the car. These are ways that they, unfortunately, are not super truthful, about these types of things. I often have cases where they'll say they have watery bloodshot eyes and they have a video. In every DWI case in New York, if you take a breath test, there's a video and then the eyes are shown clear as day. Sometimes I actually get surprised when a police officer says that their eyes are clear. I'm like, wow, he's actually said the eyes were clear today. What if I get arrested while protesting, but I am a permanent resident? Should I be concerned? Can I still get deported, although I'm very much legal? It's really going to depend on what you get arrested for, right? And so if you do get arrested, your attorney has a duty to actually inform you of all immigration consequences. There's a Supreme Court case called Padilla. You have Padilla rights now as an immigrant that says that your defense attorney has an affirmative duty to warn you of any sort of immigration consequences. So if that happens to you, there are some things that will not affect your residency. There are other things that will affect your residency, but you very much will get legal advice. You have to by law now to get legal advice about that.
And then I guess the last question from Kelsey, do officers have ticket and arrest quotas to meet at the end of each month?
The NYPD has been, officers have come out and said yes. There are a lot of officers in the NYPD who have come out and they have said, you know, a lot of the stuff when we see that are speaking out about this, that are whistleblowing, that are saying that there are absolutely quotas in the NYPD. Their official answer is no, but, you know, these officers are, you know, bravely coming forward and talking about different things in transit, especially subway cops. There is this documentary, Crime and Punishment, on Netflix about a police officer who tried to whistleblow on some of this quota stuff and kind of the blowback that happened to him. It's a worthwhile documentary if anybody's interested in that type of stuff.
Jenny, thank you so much.